Are you somebody who does more exercise if what you're doing isn't working? Are you someone who starts exercising more without increasing your food intake? Could you be underestimating your caloric needs? Your menopause calorie deficit backfires when you have inadequate energy reserves to fuel your daily activities together with your exercise. In a world where overweight and obesity is a real epidemic, that may seem like very strange opening for an episode directed at getting more muscle, getting more bone density, and living healthier. However, if you're a woman in menopause struggling to lose weight, you may be thinking that eating the fewest calories wins the game. You'd be wrong. I'm Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top struggles and concerns and hopefully inspire you. I share what to eat, how to move, and how to change your mindset so that you can have the energy and the vitality that you want, need, and deserve in the second and better half. Listen, let's talk a little bit about menopause calorie deficit versus energy deficit. So, you know me as the menopause fitness expert, the hormone balancing fitness expert for women in menopause, creator of the After 50 fitness formula for women and the Flipping 50 fitness specialist course for fitness trainers and health coaches. This episode isn't about diets or nutrition, but it is about why your exercise isn't working. In fact, can't work in relationship with your diet. Because if on one hand, we're talking about exercise that will boost your metabolism, then we can't have a complete conversation without talking about how you're going to feed that elevated metabolism. You don't have to be a marathoner or a triathlete to qualify as an athlete. The International Council on Active Aging has always qualified an active older adult intentionally exercising to better themselves as an athlete. If you exercise 3 to 5 times a week, you're there. So, if you're listening, you're within earshot, you probably are going to want to hear this. These are some situations that could result in too little recovery to support your hormones. And remember this, it is hormones, not calories, that control your weight and your fat. Exercising more without changing your nutrition at all. Exercising more without recovering between with a combination of rest sessions, sleep, low stress, and nutrition being recovery. And eating less without changing your exercise. Okay? So, if we combined any of those, we'd be in bigger trouble. Nutrition here, when we talk about the word nutrition, refers to all things food. First, your calories. While a calorie deficit is usually necessary for weight loss, it is trumped by hormones. So you need to have a calorie deficit and you need to have hormones that are in balance. And if you don't have both, and especially if you don't start with hormones in balance, you will never attain that ideal or optimal body composition or weight. So if you've got an unrealistic gap between the energy expended from just your daily functioning, what we call your resting metabolic rate, plus your exercise, and your food intake. If there's a very unrealistic gap between all the things that require energy, daily living, breathing, and exercise, and over here on the other side, your food intake, your body goes into stress mode. Like, we're starving here. They're starving us. Must be a drought. I've got to protect you. I've got to store fat. I'll hold this for you right here on your thighs, right? Chronically stressed, your body is going to store fat. Food is also not just the calories, but it is what it's made up. Your protein, very important when we're talking about muscle mass, and definitely that's a much more proactive way to go than to talk about fat loss. So if you're seeking weight loss, specifically fat, more protein is required to preserve your lean muscle tissue while that weight loss happens. If you lose weight that is muscle, long term, you will have significantly slowed your metabolism such that weight regain is very likely. We're also talking about the quality of the food. So if we just start with calories, we can't say 500 calories is 500 calories. If it's one hand, it comes from chocolate cake, and don't forget the frosting because that's my favorite part. Or on the other hand, it comes from salmon and sweet potatoes at dinner. Very different the way those two things are going to be used. Micronutrient dense foods are your best friend. It takes more than protein alone. Eating the rainbow, and yes, eating carbs is required to gain muscle. So if you're going too low on carbs and you're exercising, that might help you shed water weight for Saturday night, but it will backfire long term since your exercise is only fighting a battle against losing muscle. You won't win that battle, and you definitely can't gain lean muscle without some carbohydrates. Let me ask you something. Are you feeling tired? Significantly few calories, like fewer than you need, combined with an increase in exercise, creates a fuel deficit for your body. Okay, that makes sense. The amount of fuel it burns will slow. Your body will be telling you it's tired in effort to get you to do less because it's got less fuel, can't go very far. In menopause, calorie deficit is a bit trickier than it ever was for you before, especially if you're trying to intermittent fast and do keto and exercise on top of that. Experiencing a great deal of fatigue? Check with your calorie intake versus your calorie output. Sometimes in the middle of a program, one of our students might say that they suddenly have started to experience fatigue. My first question is, what is your diet like? Describe to me what you're doing from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. Are you getting adequate protein? And you're timing your protein and your carbohydrates correctly? You've been a more active person for 8 weeks. Have you begun to eat like a more active person? Those are really logical questions. And not to be condescending, but often we don't stop and think about those things because we're so focused on weight loss and we are so conditioned to the fact that we should be eating less and trying to starve because if we're doing that, that must be the route to more energy and feeling good. Right? Do you hear the craziness in that? There are a lot of lessons and a lot of reasons for fatigue. Sometimes fatigue is your body's way of telling you that there is or there was a severe energy deficiency. Prime example. Sometimes I'll work with clients and we schedule within everybody's week at least a day of rest, meaning you're not exercising. You might be actively doing something else. Or if you need a day off and you really need to lounge around, you can. Other people have 2 or 3 days, recovery days of exercise, or it's literally additional days of rest. But it is often for a very busy and on the go kind of person. It is on those rest days when you actually realize your fatigue level. Because a lot of us have two speeds. It's just go or it's stop. I am dead. I'm drained. I'm really tired. But you don't stop to listen when you're doing the exercise and all day and you're just so tempted. And that can be really problematic long term because what you're doing is on the go constantly. You're not fueling as constantly, and something's going to give eventually. Usually it shows up in one of two ways. Well, let me say three: illness, injury, or a weight loss plateau. It just doesn't make sense to you why you're not losing weight when you have this huge calorie deficit. But let's say this. When I say it another way, every time you eat too little, you're messaging your body to burn less. And when you eat more, you message your body to burn more. In either case, that can go wrong, right? If we all ate like it was Thanksgiving every day, we'd be in trouble when the activity of the day is usually on TV. If you've been a chronic dieter, you already know what it's like to be on a diet to lose weight and then find when you return to normal eating that you gain the weight back, if not more. Generally, weight loss that occurs with a certain activity and diet can only be sustained by doing more activity and less food. That's in theory, but literally it is what happens. It's the mechanism because you no longer weigh the same. Your resting metabolism is lower simply because you don't weigh the same anymore. You're less. That means if you weighed 200 pounds and you lost 50 pounds, probably excellent for your heart and for your risk of other disease, but you do have a slower metabolism. And yet, you may be able to do more in terms of exercise and all day activity so that you're balancing that out and you're still able to burn potentially more. So, it's not all bad, but when it gets really out of control, that's when we have to watch it. So, generally, say that again, weight loss that occurs with a certain activity and diet can only be sustained by doing more activity and less food. But since neither are possible long term without illness or injury or both, there's got to be a better way. What is it? Well, it's finding your Goldilocks of activity level, your Goldilocks of eating, and the Goldilocks of sleep to support your optimal body functioning. Those are really three big ones because sleep is the golden standard of recovery. So, how much do you need when we're talking here calorie deficit? How many calories do you need? How much food? I hate to count, but I'll give you an idea. And this is how apps are helpful. Just to spot check, your resting metabolism is just what it takes to live, to breathe, to function. No exercise. That's probably around 1,200 to 13 calories if you're, say, a medium sized woman. Let's say somebody who's between 130 to 140, maybe 145. But a large sized woman is going to require more because bigger, more oxygen, more required to sustain it. So think about that. If you're not eating 1,200 to 1,300 calories, you're not even covering your basic metabolism needs. And many women are barely getting that. Now, let's not forget that your brain also needs fuel. So if you're thinking that you sit all day, every day, you do have a sedentary job, so you don't need food, you're thinking. Make sure that you factor in whether you're really just lying around watching movies, eating grapes, and getting massages, or if you're running a business, like making a lot of big decisions, your brain needs fuel. So there's a big difference in your energy needs there. But if you're an active woman, you're actively, say, before that work and running the show, you're getting up and exercising several mornings a week, or optimizing your weekends when you have a little bit more time. So you're really active then, somewhat moderate active during the week, just to balance, number one, your stress level during the week, which is wise, and your time management. You're an active woman. So let's say you're someone who does a 20-minute HIIT high intensity interval training and a strength session. And then you go out and you're playing golf all day or gardening or cleaning the house all day. You need significantly more than that basal or resting metabolism, that 1200 to 1300 calories. You need significantly more, and like 1,000 potentially. A calorie deficit gone extreme. Using a client's Fitbit to track her activity recently, she hadn't realized that during summer days, she's exercising. She'll get up, she'll do her workout, then she's playing golf, and she's walking. And there were days when she's been burning 3,000 to 5,000 calories. Now, instead of a reasonable 3 to 500 calorie deficit daily, right? So if you burn 250 more than usual, you eat 250 less, you have a reasonable calorie deficit that can help you lose weight. That's kind of that easy 1 to 2 pounds. Now, it doesn't always work like that. You're not a math problem. It's chemistry. Hormones are chemistry. So if you're doing it wrong, throwing yourself under the bus, this won't work. But let's just for illustration purposes say that a reasonable caloric deficit of 300 to 500 won't throw your hormones under the bus like cortisol and insulin. Her deficit in this case was like 2,000 to 2,500 calories. That was the deficit. You will never lose weight doing that. Or if you do, it will be muscle wasting. And all you're doing is then going to lose muscle along with your fat, and you will regain weight and find it difficult. You'll plateau again and again and again and convince yourself you have to eat even less and exercise it even more, and then you'll get injured over and over again because you're not eating enough and you're not eating enough of the right foods, protein, carbohydrates, nutrient rich foods. Dieting will not work if you're an active, thriving woman, and you are. We've really got to look very closely at what it is you're doing. Muscles require both protein and carbs, and a large deficit just won't get them, not enough of them in the way that you need them. So rest and reduce, but don't starve. On your rest and recovery days, provided you've completely recovered from challenging workout days, you can consume less. It makes sense, but not dramatically less. You still need 3 meals. You still need to eat protein and carbs and fat. You just don't need the extra that actually serves for the energy for your exercise or helps you repair from that exercise. You do not want to play the game. Well, I haven't exercised, therefore I shouldn't eat. That is an absolute nightmare. I guarantee you that if you have either a 2,500 or an 800 calorie deficit, you'll hear more about that one in a minute. Your body can in no way be getting what it needs for muscle, bone, and tissue health. It's showing up everywhere, and my guess is you may be just ignoring it. When you look in the mirror, you may not actually look like a person who is healthy. Look at your eyes, look at your face, your skin. They're telling a story. And without adequate calories and fuel to provide yourself with the energy you need, you actually can't fake healthy. Another client was tracking calories and proudly reported she was keeping her calories at 1,100 until she lost a few pounds. Here's what's oh so wrong with that. As I mentioned earlier, when you eat less, you message your body to burn less. So you're more tired. And intuitively, you think it's just the exercise making you tired. I just don't know why I was so tired, I'll hear. Women often don't think that they haven't eaten as much, that has anything to do with their fatigue, especially if it's something that they've gotten away with previously. So if you've had a history of eating very little and dieting, and that's been your MO and it's been okay, It may not work for you during menopause when we are all more susceptible to the negative effects of stress. I feel like I must write that on the chalkboard like as punishment from a teacher. I bet you could write that on the chalkboard as much as I say that. But it has so much to do with your problem of getting away with the things that used to work and why they don't. Here's the real fact. That wasn't a good thing when it did fool you into thinking it was working. You were losing muscle, but we didn't notice it so dramatically then. Now, we can't really step out of bounds. The referee is blowing the whistle, and it's your body. Nobody else has got to do it for you. You just know the feedback and the data you're getting from weight that's depositing differently in your body, maybe just relocating to your belly or your arms or your buns, or you're adding weight as well. Maybe you got both of those. You're gaining weight and it's relocating places you don't love it. That's all feedback. Even the inability to sleep, where you never had a problem with that before. An appetite that's suddenly disappeared, but cravings that have appeared. All of that is feedback that something you're doing is not working. So here's what happens when you're doing that caloric deficit, thinking this is the way I lose weight. Your body slows, wants to put out less energy and effort. And if you were ever, quote unquote, successful losing weight on a diet like that, do you realize that you'd have to eat less than that 1,100 calories to sustain the weight loss? Yes, and exercise more. And very quickly, again, it's just not possible. Not without injuries, illnesses, and probably a very cranky self. So, what's the answer? I'm so glad you asked. Strength training and body composition instead of just the scale, just that scale that tells you weight. If you're skinny in menopause, chances are you are going to be frail and fractured at 80. I'm going to say that again. If you're skinny in menopause, chances are you are going to be frail and fractured at 80. You want to be strong. Strong you. Yes, you can like the reflection in the mirror. Yes, you can enjoy shopping for clothes. And yes, you can command attention when you walk in a room. None of that comes from skinny. And this is by the way, no condescending shout out to the smaller, petite women in our audience who are also strong. If that's the way you're built, amen. But this is for those of us that are trying to be something that we are just not meant to be, struggling and punishing ourselves and living with low energy levels in order to attain some kind of magic that we think happens when we look like a certain image or icon. And it's in your head. Maybe it's no celebrity. Maybe it's no fairy tale. Maybe it's no Barbie, but it is something that you're not. And if we can change the approach here so that you can start to feel better in your skin confidently, regardless of the size or the scale. If you stop focusing on the scale, the very ironic thing is that the scale often begins to change. A reasonable caloric deficit with regular meals, especially near your exercise, so you optimize your muscle protein synthesis, is the answer. You will feel better. You'll want to do more, not less. You'll also want to go sleeveless or carry your own darn food bag, dog food bag. A reasonable calorie deficit doesn't disrupt your hormones. It puts your body back into a fat burning state that comes from expending more energy during exercise. And you also get to enjoy food again instead of thinking of it as the enemy. Skinny jeans? Anybody? I'm not suggesting that you give up your skinny jeans unless your thighs, like mine, are more muscular and made for something different. I've never been able to find jeans that fit my waist without a gap and also hug my hips. I've found about two pair in my lifetime, and guess what? I hung on to them so long, they're back in style. I am suggesting that if you starve to fit into your skinny jeans, or really what I would call somebody else's skinny jeans, life could be so much more fun. There you have it. So, a little discussion about how just a simple try to reach that calorie deficit is really going to backfire on you in menopause. A small and a reasonable one, together with making sure you have the habits in exercise and your nutrition and your sleep and your other daily habits, including mindset, that help to balance your hormones. That is what truly will get you the energy and the vitality that you want, need, and deserve. I'd love to know if this resonated with you at all. And what are you waiting for? Let's start flipping 50 together.